Good morning, everyone. We're going to let people have a chance to log on. So we will get started in just a minute. When I see the numbers kind of slow down, then we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, and it looks like we're there. So good morning, everyone. I'm Claire Lewis, the director of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, and I'd like to welcome you today to the Florida Friendly Landscaping Professional Webinar Series. Today's webinar, as you can see by the screen, is Should You Bamboo? And this is with Shanti Pierce. We're really excited about this conversation today. You may have noticed your microphones have been muted. So we will be closing the chat feature after we kind of finish the introductions today. So we're doing something a little new. So please put your questions in the Q&A box today, and we will take all those at the end of the presentation. We'd also like to let you know this webinar has been approved for one FFLCP, LIAF, FTAX, and DBPR for landscape architectures, and FNGLA CEU. There is a $15 administration fee for that CEU, and I'll put a link in the chat box to make the payment if you've not already done so, if you would like a certificate of continuing education. Otherwise, of course, the webinar is completely free. We will be submitting the CEUs to the licensing agency on Friday. So, don't worry if it doesn't come right away. We will be doing it by Friday, and you will get your certificate, and those CEUs will be submitted to the licensing agency. And this is part of a monthly webinar series that we hold for landscape professionals. It's on the second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. That said, we have an extra webinar scheduled for September. So we have one on September 5th, which is creating show-stopping landscapes and having success with bedding plants. And that's with Debbie Mola from Disney. And then on September 10th, on our regularly scheduled webinar, it's Learn What to Watch For, Landscape Insect Update with Dr. Adam Dale. At the end of this webinar, you will also see a survey invitation pop up. So please take a moment to fill that out, as it really helps us determine what educational programs to offer. And as we start to get towards the end of this year, we're going to be really looking at what your suggestions are, and it'll help us determine what we're going to offer for next year. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tom Wickman to introduce today's speaker.
Claire, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to speak to such a large group. We got a lot of you that have logged on today to hear about bamboo, and it's a topic that we get a lot of questions about. So I'm really excited about today's presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Is Shanti Pierce. Has been working with bamboo since the mid-90s. She moved to Florida to work for Walt Disney Imagineering as their bamboo and ornamental grass specialist on the Animal Kingdom project, and following that project began her own farm. Shanti is the owner of Bamboo Leaf Tea, a company that has pioneered the use of bamboos as medicine in the U.S. She also owns the Bamboo Life, a company that specializes in bamboo farming, consultations, and installations. Through this venture, she helps individuals and businesses and farms create unique and sustainable spaces using bamboos. For Shanti, the connection between people and bamboos is a source of inspiration and joy. She conducts workshops on bamboo cultivation and utilization, as well as delivers lectures on the diverse applications of bamboo. Once again, I think this topic is so fascinating. I've got 3 species of bamboo in my landscape. She's going to show you a lot more and tell you a little bit about how to manage these and take care of them. So without further delay, let me turn the floor over to Shanti Pierce.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm so happy that there are so many people who are interested in learning a little bit more about bamboos. And so we're going to run through some of the basics. I really think of you guys as being artists who work in the medium of plants. And so knowing what plants do and how they adjust to different situations in the context is really, really important. And bamboos can be really a challenge in that way because they can shapeshift, right? So they can look one way in one place and one way in another. And then the other problem is like you look online and the information is really just, I mean, I look at it and I'm like, this isn't true. So we're going to go through a little bit of information. Just know that you can ask questions at the end. And also you can also reach out to me and contact me at any time to talk further about bamboos. I'm always happy to talk about bamboos. And I'm also going to end giving you some resources of places to learn more about bamboos so that if you want to get out there and get hands-on with them and really want to dive in, you've got some resources. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about that we here in Florida, we deal with tropical and subtropical bamboos. There are both temperate and tropical. And so what we tend to do is basically put them into two different categories. We have running bamboos and clumping bamboos. And of course, the big question that you're going to get asked, the very first question you're going to get asked is this going to take over my yard? Is this invasive? I don't really like the word invasive around bamboos, but we will address that. So when we talk about running bamboos, those are the ones that often people are referring to. Like the running bamboo is going to take over my yard. There was planted a lot of bamboos in the Southeast as a Department of Ag program back in the 50s, and those have become problematic, like fast forward, right? And so we're really lucky that in Florida, we do more of the clumping bamboos. These are subtropical, tropical bamboos. And when we say clumping, we mean that that is a circle. That circle gets bigger every year, as opposed to the running bamboos where it starts in one place and moves to another place. Now, within that context, there are a lot of variations, right? So the clumping can be a tight clumping bamboo. It can also be an open clumping bamboo. With the running bamboos, they can run quickly and they can run slowly. So there are a lot of nuances but for the most part, for this presentation and in Florida, we are going to be focusing on what we call clumping bamboos. And so the next question that I get a lot is how big do they get when they're fully grown, right? And so this is that same concept, right? A plant is never really fully grown because it's either growing or it's dying, right? Now, these clumping bamboos, as you can see from the picture, it's the neck that comes out and it makes a U shape and it forms up into the culm, right? The culm is the stalk and that grows up and then it starts to leaf out. So how far away those are from each other are determined by the rhizome. And that rhizome can either be a short U or it can be a very long U, as opposed to like what we're seeing on the other side, which is what's called a monopodial or single foot, whereas it starts in one area and then these are long, elongated, and then they form new areas that come up. Okay, so here is the very famous moso, just to give you an example of a running bamboo. These are ones that sometimes you can walk through like this, or you see as like a forest type setting. And what we like to say is these are temperate bamboos, meaning they're from colder climates. So if we have any of you here that are working in colder climates, these are the ones that you're going to be working with. And some of them are hardy down to -20 degrees. So bamboos can be used in a lot of different areas. And if you're talking about these colder climates, you're often talking about these. With the running bamboos, these are called monopodial. They're temperate because they're from northern areas. We like to say that they are colonized in areas. So here's the big difference when we're talking about invasive is like as grasses that seed themselves can be problematic because of their invasive qualities. Think like kogon grass, right? But bamboos are in what's called a perpetual vegetative state. And that goes on until they go into flower. Now, them going into flower is also a huge variation, but in general, they go into flower over long periods of time, like 50 years or 80 years or 100 years. Some never go into flower. So they're in this perpetual vegetative state. And when they do go into flower, they create a flower that's kind of like a wheat seed, but it's very heavy. And so it tends to drop down right underneath where the plant is. The other thing about bamboos is, this is pretty interesting, is that they know how many of their type are around them. If it's just one single plant, it tends not to produce viable seed. If it's like a forest area where they can cross-pollinate with each other and share DNA and things like that, they will tend to produce more viable seed. But either way, those seeds are dropping down below the plant. And so there isn't as much of this idea of like them spreading down the highway, for instance, because the seed is traveling by wind. And so even for the running bamboos, we're talking about colonizing areas. And so again, these are for northern areas. We're mainly going to focus on these clumping bamboos. This is a typical idea of a clumping bamboo. And so what people say is like, no, they're all going to go from one place to the other. They're not all going to go. And this is a very clear example of what we're talking about. Now, even within like our turf grasses and stuff, there are running grasses and there are clumping grasses. And this is the same concept. When these grasses are in a juvenile state, they grow faster. As they get older, they tend to slow down, just like we do, right? So these are going to grow faster when they're juveniles, and then they will continue to grow. Now, this is the key point, is that circle is going to continue to get bigger throughout the entire life of the bamboo until it goes into flower and it dies. That is called gregarious flowering. So when people ask me, it's like, how big is it going to get when it's fully grown? This is kind of a problem, because either, you know, that width is going to continue. And so usually what I tell them is like, okay, like a tree is never fully grown. You might meet maximum height, but you're never going to meet maximum width, because that width is always going to continue to grow. And we'll address this later in maintenance, but I just wanted to get some of these major questions that come up over and over again for people that they get really confused about. And I find that the further along I get with this, the more basic the questions get, and especially on bamboo, because there's so much misinformation. So we're going to kind of, I know this is kind of basic for some people. We're just going to kind of go over these things. As my brother-in-law likes to say, that the smartest people out there on customer service are like the technical support who go, is your computer plugged in, right? So we're doing the is your computer plugged in on bamboos on here. Okay, so clumping bamboos are pachymeramorphs, such as podial. That means like multiple feet, right? These are tropical and subtropical plants. Now that means we can have hardy bamboos that go all the way up into South Carolina and even into coastal North Carolina, Georgia. These are areas that are actually fairly underused for these plants, but there are some cold hardy subtropical bamboos that will grow all the way up into there. So definitely your North Florida people, we are talking to you as well. Don't feel left out on the clumping bamboo thing, because there are a lot of bambusas that can grow up there. The bambusas tend to be those subtropical bamboos that can do the freeze as well as doing all the heat and water, right? And the tropicals, we're talking about like the bigger stuff that, you know, might be hardy only up to like 27. So with these guys, we're talking like we've got subtropical bamboos that will go down to maybe as low as 12. Certainly they can do dips, like if it's a short dip, something like that. And for extended periods of time, like in the teens, something like that. There are, we will always say there are some exceptions. The Himalayan clumping bamboos that come from, you know, up in the mountains are also a clumping bamboo that are very hardy. Those are the northern option for clumping. So functional uses, again, we're going to talk about clumping bamboos. I'm just going to keep reiterating, because this is what I have to do with people, is we are talking about clumping subtropical, tropical bamboos. And that's why we're so lucky in Florida. Functional uses. The biggest thing that people ask for using bamboo for is privacy, the number one thing. So it also is a sound barrier, a windbreak, and fast growing shade. So what people are looking for is they're looking for something that can give them privacy in their backyard as quickly as possible that they can maintain. And we'll get into maintenance later, like I said, but in general, what I think of maintenance is all about goals. And that's usually how I word it to people, is like your goals determine what your maintenance is going to look like. And this is true. You guys are very familiar with tropical plants and how much maintenance they need. And this is very true for bamboos. The other thing to consider is that once a fast growing plant, always a fast growing plant, right? So people are like, what's the fastest bamboo you have? Well, just keep in mind that it's not like you turn off the, hit the off button and you turn it off, right? So these just keep going. Ornamentally, which we don't get as many questions about, but I love to talk about, is like that big tropical leaf, right? You see those pictures out of Miami and things like that. You get that big tropical leaf, and you can do those and push that zone a little bit on that tropical landscape look with some of these bamboos, which is really fun. Color, shape, and size. Now, there are like we're getting close to 2,000 known bamboos at this point. When we talk, and you'll hear me say the word, I'll just reiterate this, I'll say bamboos with an S as opposed to saying bamboo with no S, because I want people to start to understand that we're not just talking about one plant. We're talking about many, many, many plants. These things are grasses that moved into the forest. And so they're edge of the forest, understory forest dwellers of the grass family. That means that they're very highly adaptable. Grasses are the most adaptable plant on the planet, right? So these grasses most of them can do full sun or shade. However, their preference tends to be edge of the forest and into understory, depending on which variety we're talking about. So keeping that in mind, with color, oftentimes that color is more pronounced in the shade. With variegation, because we're in Florida, we don't get the high variegation that you would get in California and things like that, but there are some that have some nice variegation. And then the size is the biggest thing. I always try to educate people on where they're going. And I think this is the biggest issue with people and selling them on bamboos and what they're going to get into, because I over and over again see people mislabel bamboos and then plant something that's going to get like 40 feet tall and 20 feet across, and they've got it right up against their house, right? So knowing your medium and how to use your medium, it gives bamboo a better name, right? When we put bamboos in places that is not the right place, it gives bamboos a bad name. And this isn't just true for bamboos, but it tends to be a huge problem in bamboos. So my friend Jacob in North Florida Bamboo, he does a lot of maintenance. We'll see this a lot, and we'll talk about maintenance later, but it has a lot to do with the look and what you're looking for. So we're going to run through a few slides here just to give you a little bit of difference in looks of what people are asking for. In this case, this is very common as something that's asked for, which is that bamboo look that has the leaves to the top, but is topped. In this case, this bamboo is topped and hedged and then limbed up from the bottom, because as soon as you top a bamboo, it wants to leaf all the way down. So, but this look of privacy here is a very common kind of that Asian look. Lighting is another thing. Uplighting on bamboos looks really beautiful in the evening. In this case, those are graceful bamboos. This is an interior landscape. Bamboos do get used sometimes in arboretums and things like that inside. they don't tend to do very well. It tends to be problematic at best. They have to switch them out often. They defoliate. They really don't like being inside. They're not at all a great house plant. So that is another question I get a lot. If somebody's going to keep a bamboo, I often, what I suggest is keep it in a pot on the, outside on the patio. You can keep them in greenhouses up north, but again, like, they're challenging, and it's mainly because of the leaf defoliation. It's a lot of maintenance. Again, this is graceful and privacy, lighting, more graceful. And then we'll talk about a little bit about color. You can get into these different tropical colors that people are looking for. One thing that's becoming popular or has been popular for a while is utilizing these bright oranges and yellows and things like that. And you can highlight those with these bright colored bamboos. Again, privacy, just more options on what visually you're looking at. And I think the more that you look and get acquainted with bamboo, the more you'll start seeing them pop up everywhere, and you'll notice them, because we have seen them, increase in numbers in the Florida landscape a lot. So this is Alphonse Carr again. Here we're talking about colors. Okay, and so from here, we're going to go into what I'd like to do is go into a little bit about specific bamboos, because I know this is really hard. And I would say that, I really highly encourage you to go and actually start seeing bamboos and what they're going to do. Because again, like, if you get a little 3-gallon plant, it can look, like it's, like just a little 3-gallon plant. And then, 5 years later, it turns into something that's completely different. So knowing where you're going, and I know this is stating the obvious, but this is the biggest problem that we run into with bamboos, is knowing where you're going and what your goals are has a lot to do with which bamboos you pick out at the beginning. So the biggest ones forever have been the green bamboos. Like I said, variegation can be a little problematic in Florida. The number one plant in Florida right now on bamboos is graceful bamboo. So graceful bamboo is a bamboo that gets about 25 feet tall. It's a dense clumper. It's fast growing. It's relatively small in the bamboo world, as far as, like, we call it like a mid-sized bamboo. And you can hedge it, you can trim it, you can do all sorts of things to it. And it always looks beautiful. It's got a really beautiful long, narrow leaf, and it will leaf all the way down when you hedge it. The next one is RG dwarf. RG dwarf is a smaller form of graceful. I would say the difference between RG dwarf and graceful is that RG dwarf tends to be more of a V. So there's a lot of bamboos in this textilis range. Like, I've probably seen 20 different textilises. They're kind of all out there. That plant tends to cross hybridize and has a lot of variation. The thing is that what we're looking at with bamboos is trying to get something that's upright. So we're still looking for, like, the ultimate bamboo, which would be what everybody asks me. Like, I just need something that gets to like 10 or 12 feet. Right. And it's like, I just need a mango that gets to 10 feet. Right. Like, these are always the questions. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way, but thanks for asking. So RG dwarf is a smaller version of graceful. However, it's just a little more of a V kind of bushy shape. And when we were talking about creating privacy and working in smaller spaces, which is in general, a lot of what we're doing is trying to fit something big into a small space, upright makes a big difference. So where graceful wins every time is that she's super upright. Textilis emerald. So from that, we've got emerald is another textilis. It's kind of the quintessential bamboo, is that it gets about 30 feet tall. It's got a dense clumping. It's a bigger plant than graceful. It's got the leaves that 1/3 up, and it gets about a 2-inch diameter culm, up to 2 inch. So it is quite a bit bigger plant, and we'll look into that in a minute. Bambusa oldhamii is a chunky plant that gets about 30 feet tall. Fern leaf and multiplexes. So the thing with the multiplexes is that they are a plant that can go into that North Florida, Georgia, South Carolina zone. And we'll look at a few different ones of those. Sea breeze gets about 40 feet tall. I often call it the bigger version of graceful, super fast growing. This one you can use a little bit larger space because the footprint of this over 20 years is going to get about 20 feet across. And then vulgaris woman Buddha belly. Buddha belly is just, it's kind of like the tuffula tree. And it's got these little pom-poms on top, maxes out around 12 feet, has that beautiful, like super fun calm that you're like, if plants can do this, like what else can they do, right? Like these just fun things that bamboos do. So let's look at a few pictures. So graceful, like I said, graceful is that, you know, highly, you know, most highly used plant. The leaves, when you let it grow fully up, go to that top third. That's typical on bamboos, is that the leaves gravitate up to the top third. The nice thing about graceful is that it doesn't have a lot of branching. The other thing I like to highlight is that graceful tends to be very user friendly. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have those little hairs that stick into you sometimes on the bamboos. It also is really smooth. So when you're thinking about using bamboos in an area where people are interfacing, especially kids or older adults, then we're talking about things that people can touch, right? Touching and feeling plants is a big part of it, I feel like, especially like in preschools or anything like that to do with schools. Then I like graceful a lot because it's really smooth. So it's got a very touchable feel to it. The tea is really good from this one too. This is that dwarf graceful or RG dwarf. And you can see what I'm talking about when we're talking about the shape of bamboos. The shape of bamboos is a big part of where we can use them. Now, if you hedge this, you can hedge it and it's a smaller bamboo, stays in that range of about 16 feet, stays a smaller calm, a little bit smaller than graceful, which is like a bit over an inch. This one stays a bit under an inch. And again, bamboos will grow to they're like a goldfish. They will grow to what they have, right? So if you make the plant really happy, it's going to grow faster. It's also going to grow slightly bigger, right? They, like I said at the beginning, they shape shift. So it often can be a little challenging to tell which one it is because they'll look different depending on where they're growing. This is that quintessential emerald that looks like the typical bamboo picture, right? Dense clumping up to 2 inches. Like I said, this is a bigger, a little bit bigger bamboo, up to 30 feet. But the nice thing is like that, you know, that look, I don't get to do this one a lot, but that kind of rhythmic look is really beautiful with emerald. So if you're talking about like a little bit bigger estate that wants to give that kind of, you know, that movement through a space with bamboo and give that rhythmic feel to it, this is a really pretty one. And it can also be hedged. This is oldhamii. Oldhamii will get up to 4 inches in diameter. I like to say this one's a little bit of a princess because she, like I have it growing, I'm in a low area where my farm is, which most bamboos absolutely adore, right? Except for oldhamii, who seems to just kind of chunk along very slowly. But if I put her in a subdivision with, you know, regular fertilizer, well drained, you know, fill dirt and some, you know, irrigation, it'll get 4 inches within a very short period of time, like less than 2 years. So very, very upright, small footprint on this one for the size of the bamboo. So this is usually the go-to of like, I want something big and chunky, that big feel of bamboo, but it fits into a really small space. Oldhamii is that one. I would say the only drawback on oldhamii is that because it is really upright, it's not highly flexible. And so therefore it tends to come down in hurricanes more than the other ones. A lot of them, the sea breeze, the graceful, things like that, those are protective during hurricanes. But oldhamii I find to be one that gets leaners, and it will occasionally even come out of the ground. So it is a drawback on that round. In general, bamboos do really, really well during hurricanes. The smaller ones act as super protective barriers for other plants, for buildings, and for other things within the property. So in general, the wind protection that bamboos give is huge. And if you're talking about like a windbreak, a green windbreak versus a concrete windbreak, just FYI, a concrete windbreak, the wind hits it, it goes up and it dives down. A green windbreak will give you 7 to 10 times the length. So if your windbreak is 10 feet tall, you've got 70 to 100 feet past that of protection. And it's a slow dive. It's not an immediate dive. That's a lot of protection when you're talking about creating protection around housing or around animals that are outside. So lots of benefits there. This is oldhamii again. Again, like I said, smaller footprint, little bit open structure, doesn't give you that privacy that often people are looking for, but really beautiful and can be, I would feel totally safe putting this right up against a house or a pool or a structure, and using it that way. This is oldhamii again. Big chunky bamboo. And this one's hardy down to low 20s. So you can use this up into, Central Florida and even a little bit further north than that. Fern leaf. So fern leaf, again, we were talking about the multiplexes. The multiplexes are the hardiest of the clumping bamboos. And like I said, these are the ones that we can go up into South Carolina, even on the coastal North Carolina, certainly into Georgia and all of North Florida. So into the panhandle, these are your bamboos. Multiplexes tend to have that mushroomy shape, right? So the width is just as high as the height. Fern leaf is the smallest one, getting about 14 to 16 feet. When they're in the shade, it works great as an understory, which is where my favorite area to use it is this understory under oaks, where somebody wants that privacy under a tree that stays in that smaller range. So underneath in the shade, they'll stay a little bit smaller, they'll grow a little bit slower, and sometimes that's a good thing. And with like Alphonse Carr, which is the sister plant to this, the yellow version, the colors are a little bit brighter. Sea breeze. So sea breeze again is this one, it gets about 40 feet tall and very dense. You can see in this picture, these were planted, I think this is like 3 years after planting them 7 feet apart as a 10-gallon, right? So they will fill in very quickly. So oftentimes people say like, I want something that fills in really fast that I want to do on privacy, and I need to block a 2 or 3 story building. Now, the issue with sea breeze is that you're going to have to come back later and address the width if that's an issue, because it is a big plant that gets wide. As far as a plant that does well in hurricanes, this plant as a bigger plant is the most effective hurricane barrier. It does not have any damage. I haven't experienced any damage with this one in the 30 years of using it, whereas a lot of the bigger ones can get like twisting and things like that. This one is just a solid barrier. This is sea breeze again. Again, we're talking about these clumping bamboos, and you can see very clearly that that circle is a tight circle. And Buddha belly. So what often we do with Buddha belly is like limb them up, and then you can see the Buddha culms. There's a couple of things that bamboos do. They variegate and they do this Buddha shape, and Buddha belly is the biggest one on that. This one is marginally hardy, about 27 degrees. There's a variegated form too. But it's just a really fun plant, and you can fit it into really small spaces. Like I said, I think it's like, it's got these pom-pom kind of shapes on top of it that round out areas. So it's just a really good kind of standalone piece and conversation piece, right? Because it's so unique and so interesting. This is one of the shoots. Don't touch the shoots. See all those hairs? Those can irritate your skin, especially on the underside of your arms. But you want to stay away from those silica hairs that will stick in you. Black bamboos. I get asked a lot about black bamboos. The one that is most known for is Niagara, which is the running bamboo, but we have some tropical bamboos that will work. The biggest one that is used is the Bambusa lako. And then we also have Giganticloa, Atroviolaceae, and Dendrocalamus asper. That's the hitam. Now, those two second ones don't get used a lot because they're a much bigger plant. In general, in the landscape, there's not a lot of use for one of these big Dendrocalamuses or Giganticloas because they just take up a lot of room. They're a big plant. They take up a lot of room, and people just don't have room for them unless you're really going to spend a lot of money maintaining that size, right? And so that's a big consideration. But Lako is a beautiful plant. It's got this shiny black color. It's super upright. As you can see, it's like oldhamii in that it's got that little bit of more open spacing. Again, we're talking about that rhizome and the configuration of what that does and how tight that U shape is, right? These are a little bit wider on that U shape. I love this one at Easter because it's this black color calm, shiny black color with this beautiful limey green leaf. I do like to tell people that as far as a plant, it does look more seasonal. So with this one, especially if you're up in Orlando or in the Central Florida range, it will look a little shaggier during the winter because it is more of a tropical, not a subtropical, even though it can do like kind of high 20s it can get to. It's much happier when it stays warmer than that, right? And what it'll happen is if it gets too cold, it'll defoliate or the tips will get burned on it. But this one can be used in kind of those microclimates. It's got that beautiful color. The black bamboos will get sunburned, and when they're sunburned, they turn gray, right? So they need that foliage in order to protect the culms. This is actually true for most bamboos. The colors of the bamboos will change if they get sunburned. They need that foliage because, like I said, these are forest dwellers, edge of the forest and understory forest dwellers. So they are looking for that coverage. They will create it themselves, and they also like to have a little bit of help. And this is the Giganticloa. So just so you know, Giganticloa Atroviolaceae and also the asper are kind of these dusty blacks, which are really fun, and a bigger plant. Yellow bamboos. So the number, I would say there's a few top sellers in the yellow bamboos. Multiplex Alphonse Carr has been used a lot. Again, we're talking about, this is not a fairly upright. This is kind of a bushy, slightly mushroom shape bamboo, but beautiful yellow color and hardy down into the teens. So you can use this in a lot of, all the way up into the panhandle. I really like this plant a lot in the shade. It looks really good as an understory because it just brightens up a lot of areas. Kimii is a bigger plant. It gets about 40 feet. We'll look at some pictures and talk about these. And then Asian lemon gets used a lot. Now, this is a fast growing plant like graceful. It's very, very fast growing. And so the questions I like to have around this is like, let's talk about goals and what you're going to do when it's completed what you want it to do and is now going past it, right? Because this is a fast growing plant. It gets about 30 feet tall and maximum 2-inch diameter. Sunburst is used here and there. It's very branchy, so you're seeing it less and less. Batata, Hawaiian gold. I do see this one around a lot. Batata has been moved around easily because it propagates very easily. It's also cold sensitive. Again, we're talking the 27, 28. So I'll see it in Orlando, in downtown, but mostly it's a southern plant. And then yin yang. So again, here we're talking about Alphonse Carr. You're seeing those colors. I would say the thing about multiplex to keep in mind is that multiplexes are very susceptible to sooty mold, which can be a problem, not for the plant, but just visually. And here, so this is a good example of what I'm talking about, is that mushroom shape. It's very hard to get these bamboos to be upright. So when you're talking about taking up room, they take up almost as much width as they do height. And so keeping in mind the context of where you're going to put these plants and how much space you have. The colors of these, the yellows oftentimes have like this pink highlight. This comes up when they shoot at the beginning and then it kind of falls out. A lot of bamboos do, they do this magical thing where they like either come up variegated and lose the variegation, or like they have variegation that is like a late onset variegation, or they start out with these pinks and reds, but then they lose them. So these are just things that these grasses do. This is Asian lemon. So Asian lemon has a little bit of variegation on the leaf. What's nice is it's got a really nice, smooth, touchable culm, which is really fun. It's very branchy. It can be, so you have to just keep cutting the branches back. But it's more upright than Alphonse Carr, so it can be used in that way. But again, much faster growing than Alphonse Carr. So really think about where you're going with this plant. And then this is Asian lemon again. You can see it's less susceptible to sooty mold. Occasionally I see it, but not as often. So it tends to be really clean looking, which the variegated plants can get that kind of discoloration that can make them not look so pretty. You can pressure wash bamboos to get any of the discoloration off of these things, or sooty mold and things like that, if that's an option. Okay, here I just wanted to show that on the one side you have Asian lemon and on the other side you have Alphonse Carr. This is just to give you, and these guys are baby plants. They're maybe only like a year and a half old, but just to give you an idea of like, you've got more upright on the Asian lemon and more of that mushroom shape on the Alphonse Carr. And I just feel like this is a really under talked about, but really useful piece of information as to what shape these guys are going to look like later on down the road and what kind of space they're going to fill up. My mentor used to say that grasses in general, bamboos too, they soften spaces, right? They give curves. Like we have so many of these things where we're designing with these boxes and rectangles and really hard lines, that grasses do an amazing job at adding that soft feminine curve to things that people are really craving. Kimii. So I kind of brushed over this one. This one's not used as much because it is, again, a bigger bamboo. So I've used it, for instance, on farms and things like that. And it's also got a very wide base. I will say that this one is highly usable as a wood that lasts for a long time, although it's fairly branchy. It gets almost 3 inches, just under 3 inches in diameter. Very wide base to it. So it takes up like 20 years, I've got them 20 feet across. So it's a very large width of a plant. And then we've got Hawaiian gold. So it's got, and bamboos tend to, you can see the discoloration that it gets on it. Obviously, you guys are used to working in subtropical, tropical areas. We tend to get a lot of this. The things that have high color, you tend to get that kind of dirty look to them. That's just part of living in the jungle in the tropical areas. Now, like I said, you can pressure wash these guys and they don't mind a bit. Okay, blue bamboos. The two that I'm going to focus on are Bambusa chungi and also angel mist. So dendrocalamuses tend to be tropical bamboos, and this dendrocalamus is the hardiest dendrocalamus there is, right? So it can go, I've seen it go all the way into the low 20s. And we're going to take a look at some pictures. So we've got, this is chungi. Chungi is a fast growing blue bamboo. Blue bamboos will stay bluer when they're in the shade. They go more green when they're in the sun. So this one on this picture I like to show because it shows you kind of the different colors that this bamboo can get to. It's a dense clumping, fast growing bamboo. Like I said, hardy, this one also is hardy to low 20s. And it can get about taller in the shade than in the sun. In the sun, it gets about 20 feet. In the shade, it gets about 30. Bambusa chungi. Again, in the shade, the blue color comes out a little bit more, which is really fun. And when we say blue in plants, you guys know I'm talking about that kind of grayish blue color. This is chunky here on the right. So you can see it's got a fairly upright shape to it, which makes it fit into a lot of small spaces. Okay, this is angel mist. Sorry, losing my voice. Okay, dendrocalamuses that are hardy. Excuse me. Okay, dendrocalamuses, like I said, are usually tropical bamboos. This one is a hardy bamboo that gets down to the low 20s. And it's got this beautiful stripe to it. So this is considered a blue bamboo. When it's stressed or it's in the sun, it'll actually turn almost a yellow. So again, we're talking about shape shifting that bamboos do depending on the context. And this is angel mist. So one of the things about angel mist is that it's got these huge leaves. So dendrocalamuses are these tropical bamboos with these huge leaves. And angel mist has these huge leaves that you can put into up into Central Florida, right? So really beautiful, big tropical look. And it's hardy down to low 20s. Variegated bamboo. So it's a lot of these we've already talked about. The multiplexes, there's a couple different ones. There's silver stripe, there's Alphonse Carr. Dwarf Malay is one we haven't talked about yet. That one only reaches about 10 feet tall and is really great for containers. Textilis gracilis comes in a variegated form that's slightly bigger than the regular graceful. Beautiful option, and it gets more variegated the older that it gets. And then there's triple hybrid, which is a hybrid bamboo that gets very variegated. It's a very big and fast growing bamboo, so not often used. And striped Buddha. Okay, dwarf Malay. So dwarf Malay has this beautiful variegated leaf. It's hardy to like the upper 20s, something like that. And then it does really, really well on a pot. So I'll often use this around a pool or something like that where people want something that's in a container because it's a smaller bamboo, only reaches about 10 feet tall maximum. And it has that beautiful variegated leaf. It does tend to get a little rust. And there's that leaf again. This is variegated graceful. As you can see, the variegation gets really pronounced, and it gets more pronounced, like I said, the older it gets. It starts looking, at the beginning, it looks just like graceful. And then as it gets older, it gets more and more variegated, which is super fun. A little bit bigger than graceful, about 1.5 inches diameter, but fast growing and kind of does the same thing like graceful. And there's that variegation again. This is the triple hybrid. So this one is 3-inch diameter, maybe even a little bit bigger. It's hardy because it's got textilis in it. So it will go to like in the 30 or even high 20s. It's a big, fast growing plant, but it's got this beautiful variegation, like super, super big variegation. So if you're willing to put the work in, it's a beautiful big plant. And then maintenance. Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about this leading up to this, but I'm just going to highlight a few sections when we're talking about this. Context, context, context. What are the goals of the person? Because if you have all the room in the world and you just want to let them go, that's the easiest maintenance there is. However, everything else requires maintenance. And I think the biggest misnomer on bamboos is that people tend to think, oh, it's a bamboo, it's sustainable, it doesn't need maintenance. And that is just absolutely not true. So the first conversation I have with people is about what does maintenance look like? And, you know, that has everything to do as to what their expectations are. So let's go through a few of these things. Removing dead material. These culms have a lifespan of about 7 years on average, and then they die. When they die, they turn this brown color and will need to be cleaned out. So one of the main things with bamboos is just cleaning out the old material, cleaning out either the small, younger material that comes up, like at the beginning where it's super branchy and bushy, and cleaning that out to get this consistent looking comb, or cleaning out the dead material. And so obviously, like all maintenance, this is better done on a regular basis. But in general, what most people do is they wait till about 10, 6, 5, whatever, a whole bunch of years down the road. And then they're like, what's up with my bamboos? Why did they look like this? Or somebody complains or whatever. So this is tends what we do, to do this. I like to use my favorite tool on this is a Sawzall, corded or uncorded. If I'm digging bamboos, I'm using a corded. If I'm cleaning bamboos, I use a cordless, because if you get a 12-inch blade, you can really fit. One of the biggest problems is getting into the bamboos to get to the culm to cut it. When you cut the culm, you want to cut it as low as possible. And I know this is stating the obvious, but when people hedge grasses and bamboos and cut it like 2 feet up, and then you've got this ugly piece sticking up, it makes no sense at all. You want to cut that all the way down just above that lowest node, so that it's not open and water doesn't go in and possibly start any kind of rot in the plant at the base. And then you want to remove that, and it's easily chipped or removed. Hedging. So if you're going to keep a bamboo hedged, again, depending on what your goals are, you're looking at hedging them somewhere between 3 and 6 times a year to keep that maintained look. Now, you can get away with hedging them just once a year if you're going to top it. The sides require more depending on the width of that, but that new growth is going to typically come up in the summertime, and then that can just be topped one time if you're really going for minimal maintenance. And again, like here we're using a gas-powered hedger because of the strength of it. If you're doing the sides, you can often get away with electric or one like that, but you need the stronger ones. And then if you're talking about taking a bamboo that's like 25 feet and bringing it down to like 6 feet, you're gonna have to do all those with a pruner to start with, and then you can hedge them after that. Okay, if you're talking about actually removing bamboos, the best machine for that is a forestry machine. And what you're going to do is take a forestry machine, cut all of the bulk of the bamboo down, and then take a stump grinder and grind out the roots. Now, if you want to maintain a bamboo and the size of it, you can take a third of the bamboo back, either hand removal or, depending on the size of the bamboo, and then you can stump grind that portion of the root system out. If you do not stump grind that portion of the root system out, it will grow back up there. If you do, I have seen it last even 5 years without growing on that side again. So if you have a big bamboo and it's up against a wall or it's up against a building or something like that, and they don't want to remove the whole thing, you can take up to a third of it. Now you have to be a little bit careful on the bigger ones, which tends to be what people ask a lot about, because with the bigger ones, you don't want to destabilize the bamboo by taking too much out, and then it doesn't have the root system, because think of all that massive leaves at the top that are as a huge wind, like a sail. And so if you get a lot of wind and it comes up against those leaves and it doesn't have that base to hold it down, that can be a problem and it can push the bamboo over. I get a lot of questions, so I brought this up in maintenance, about bamboos and ocean frontage. And people often say, oh, you can put sea breeze on the ocean front. Okay, this is not even on the ocean front. This is actually on the A1A side. And there's a lot of plants between this and the ocean. And you can see it just gets all this fried. It's still growing and it's still making it. But bamboos are very susceptible to salt water. They cannot do ocean front. They have to be protected. So if I'm looking at planting on an ocean front, the best thing I can do is I can put like a sea grape or something like that in front of the bamboos to help protect it, and then make the bamboos smaller than the sea grape, right? So again, we're looking at like graceful or something if you want privacy, or behind a building so that they're not getting direct sea spray. But when you get a storm or a tropical storm or anything, it is going to fry the leaves. And hedging, the most popular thing to do. This is graceful. You hedge it. Again, the top you only need to do depending on how often you want, how much maintenance, what your goals are. The top really only needs to be done once after it's finished growing. But if you don't want it to have all those pieces growing up in it, you can do it a couple of times. The sides are what you're going to do throughout the year. And that just depends on like how maintained you want it to look. It's a lot like viburnum or any other hedge that you're looking at. Okay, and then we're going to very quickly go through this last section, which is I find a hard time talking about bamboos without talking about their uses because I feel like it's all intertwined. It's kind of like talking about, tomatoes without talking about how they taste, right? So we can talk about bamboos in the ornamental range, but I also like to talk about the uses of them and how they relate to other things. So we're just going to do this quickly. You can screenshot it. I can always answer questions later in in other context or whatever is good for you. So I like to do, like we said at the beginning, I have been using bamboos for food and medicine for a long time, for people, for plants, and also for animals. So when I worked at Animal Kingdom, we fed bamboos to all the animals there, and we had a forage nursery that was primarily bamboos. It also creates habitat. So people who are interested in having more birds in their yard, bamboos provide an excellent space for songbirds to nest in, as well as to live in. They feel very protected there. Water. This is a big one because with our increase of water and then no water, when you have a lot of standing water and fully grown bamboos move water very quickly, and they have this ability to adapt to how much water is in their environment. So as soon as there is like standing water around them, it actually triggers them to transpire at an increased rate, like very rapidly, far more than any other plant is able to do. So they can move standing water very quickly. Using it to feed other plants, either as chipped material that goes back onto the landscape or to make like a compost tea or things like that. Bamboos are very high in minerals, silica specifically. These are things that you can make teas from and feed it back to plants that are highly beneficial. Erosion control. We don't get a lot of that in Florida, but occasionally. That was a good one. Okay, and then using bamboos, I do this a lot in regenerative agriculture. This is something that I'm pushing a lot in that direction. The big one is syntropic farming or silvopasture. So that we're talking about adding in trees or plants to areas where animals are for shade, for windbreak, and for forage. And these are all the agroforestry. Again, we've got up in the privacy zone. This is the one that you guys are going to come up against the most. Erosion control, noise reduction, improved air quality is a big one. We have so many houses going up against roads. And the one that I like to bring up to people that they don't often think about, but I can tell you I've gotten a lot of calls about what's happened after I've planted bamboos on this, is the drunk drivers coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning through their bamboo, right? If you plant a bamboo hedge and it's fully grown, nobody's getting through that. So you don't have, these houses that used to be on a small road that are now on a major road. When there's an accident, it's a much, you're much safer by having this privacy and a barrier to your yard. Okay, and the last one is about mental health and using bamboos in mental health. So this is like where I like to say that bamboos are a great addition to schools, hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and hospitals because they do all of these things. There is a phytochemical called myrcene that just spending time in bamboos will rain down on you from, it's a terpene that comes out of the bamboo. And this is what, if you look into something like forest bathing, all plants will have phytochemicals that come down that we absorb through our skin. And the one that bamboos have is myrcene. Now, myrcene is one that makes you feel calm, makes you feel relaxed, makes you feel grounded, right? So what I like to tell to people is like, it's great to have bamboos and look at them, but spending time in them is really medicinal for you. And I don't think I have to tell anybody that mental health is a huge issue in the world, and that anything we can do to help benefit people through interfacing with plants with mental health is highly beneficial. So the visual of the green, the increased oxygen, bamboos create a lot of oxygen. The sound, I get a lot of questions about sound that I never used to get. The sounds of bamboo are very similar to water. The sounds that we respond to the most as far as calming and relaxing are water and birds. So it's not, unusual that we're going to get a lot of questions about sound. The graceful is really good on that one because it's got these little leaves that rustle together and they make that swishing sound that's really nice. And so if you have more questions, you want to learn more about bamboos, I'm going to give you a few resources. One is you can find me on Instagram, This Bamboo Life or Bamboo Leaf Tea. And I do events. I do hands-on events so that people can really get a feel for what these bamboos look like and what they're going to do. And I also do consultations, and you can watch videos and all of that, right? I highly recommend that you go out and see these plants and get a feel for them. That can be done at botanical gardens, obviously. New Shoots Bamboo is the largest bamboo propagation or largest bamboo nursery in the United States. They're wholesale only. If you are able to buy wholesale, if you're a landscaper, then you can make an appointment and go there and see what bamboos they have available. Most of the bamboos that I went here are ones that are the most highly used. Now, like I said, there are a lot of bamboos out there, but these are the ones that are most used. So this is kind of like a beginner's space to work in as to which bamboos. But I would recommend making an appointment with New Shoots, going to see what they have available and utilizing them. And then, like I said, I have information on here, and I'm happy to answer questions at any time. Just reach out to me, and I'd love to talk about bamboos.
Shanti, thank you so much. That was so entertaining. You covered so much material. Got quite a few questions. If you don't mind taking a few questions.
Yeah, happy to.
I know there was a slide later on in your presentation where you talked a little bit about the benefits to wildlife and pollinators. Maybe can you expand on that just a little bit and, again, reiterate what benefits there are to wildlife and pollinators?
Yeah, I love this one because I think it's underutilized. So in my farm alone, when I bought my farm, I bought a typical like grass and pine tree. And even though at the time it was in the middle of nowhere, I still had, and like no agriculture around, so no spraying, I had kind of a minimal insect population. And I have been very conscious on my insect farming. So I try to increase my bee population. Bees love bamboos. And I've asked a lot of beekeepers over the years, like what it is exactly about bamboos that they love. They think they might be collecting something from the nodes, like a little bit of sap, but I can tell you not only the amount of bees that I have, but the diversity of bees that I have. And I think part of it has to do with also because I have a lot of these, I mean, it's a farm, right? So I'm not doing someone's backyard, but I have a lot of these calms laying around. And those open spaces are the perfect space for solitary bamboos, right? So think of like building a bee house out of these calms. It's this nice, smaller little space where bees can get into. And the solitary bees, which are often not thought about in the insect world and really need a lot of help there, this is a perfect space for them to live. The carpenter bees also love bamboos, and I think of them and the carpenter ants as being like the cleaners of bamboos. They actually get in there and eat the old rhizomes and make new space so that new rhizomes can come up. As far as birds, you get more birds if you have more insects, right? So if you want to farm anything from a fruit tree to a bird, you want to focus on your insects. So the more insect diversity that I see, the better it is for the birds. Now, the birds also benefit because the songbirds and the migratory birds, they love to go on the bamboos because they feel very safe in there. So they can produce they can, sometimes I joke that I think I'm like on the Yelp review of the migratory birds, like, we're going to go hit that spot because we heard it was really good, because they come down and they have these safe spaces to to breed and have their families, and then they move on from there. So it does provide a lot of protection for that.
Okay, fantastic. That was excellent. Here's a question that I'm sure you hear a lot. A neighbor planted, bamboo that, now is going to get 15 feet across, 15, 20 feet across. They planted it on the lot line. What do we do?
Yeah, so this is all about context and goals and communication with the neighbors, right? Which are three very challenging conversations. And so oftentimes you're coming in midway into this, and it really depends on what each person wants and what they're willing to do. I mean, one of the negative feedbacks on bamboos in general is that they drop a lot of leaves. Bamboos, the tropical and subtropical, they're on the same pattern as the oak trees. So they're dropping their leaves in that February, March frame, and they'll drop almost 80% of their leaves, right? They are evergreen, but they're dropping a lot of leaves. And so people will complain about the leaf. Of course, in the forest, that's creating, those nutrients that are feeding back into this is the whole system of creating biomass and creating an ongoing feeding system that's going back into the plants. But in a maintained landscape, this is a problem. So there is that, and that's often what the neighbors are going to complain about, especially if they have a lawn that looks like a golf course. They don't want leaves dropping on it. So at that point, what you're going to need to do is actually remove part of the root system. If I'm coming up on something like that, I don't want to, you can simply cut the culms back. That is absolutely an option. But if you want a more permanent solution, you're going to actually remove part of the root system, which is a pancake. So it's not a deep root system, but it is a root system that can be a little challenging to cut through. And so that's where I'm using that corded sawzall or a chainsaw in order to come it out, or a stump grinder works really well in those situations. Because you can get in with a smaller stump grinder, you can get really close up against things and take that root system out so that it's not going to grow back there.
Okay, fantastic. To kind of piggyback on that question, are there any of the bamboos that shed less than others?
Yeah, that I get asked a lot, and not really. In fact, the really awful answer to that is that the running bamboos don't shed hardly at all. So, but the clumping bamboos tend to shed, and kind of all about the same.
Yeah. Okay. If it's got leaves, sooner or later, most of them are going to fall.
Right. Exactly.
You answered about salt tolerance, and there's a few that can be used, but again, not real close to, not getting direct salt spray.
I would add to that fern leaf, the multiplexes, I put into almost the same category as sea breeze. What we're talking about there is something with a thicker leaf, right? The leaf on sea breeze and fern leaf are quite thick, which makes them more resilient.
Okay, terrific. A lot of people see areca palms down in South Florida, and they kind of have a bamboo look. They're not related, are they?
No.
Okay. It's the palm family versus, versus the grasses. And, while palms are related, to closer to grasses than trees, they're certainly way different plants, and we treat them differently. So, great. Which bamboos are edible?
Oh, I love this one. The easy answer is all of them. So bamboos have something called a cyanic glycoside, which is a bitter toxin. Think like cassava. Cassava also has it. It's a heat dissipated one. Now, this often scares people, but also think like we're not running around eating potatoes, and we eat a lot of potatoes and they have a toxin in them. So some things that we're used to eating have to be cooked, and bamboo is one of them. Now, the exception to the rule is that there are several bamboos that have been collected and are starting to be used in the United States that are called sweet shoot bamboos. And these, just by variation, don't have cyanic glycosides, which means you can eat them raw or almost raw, which is like, those are the best of the best. And those are starting to be more propagated, but those are really like the best edible raw. But all of them can be eaten. So the way that the fast recipe for this is that you take the bamboo shoot about 8 to 10 inches, you put it into boiling water, you boil it for 30 to 40 minutes. Usually I add salt, sometimes I add biochar. These are just things that pull out toxins. And then you can use it in any food after that. So you can add it to soups, to stews, to all sorts of things. This is a superfood that is a perennial vegetable that you can grow in any Florida yard.
Fantastic. Fascinating. I've grown it for all these years, but I've never thought of harvesting it and bringing it inside into the kitchen, certainly.
Tea is the easiest. Tea is by far the easiest because you're just picking leaves. And keep in mind that the leaves of a bamboo plant have no discernible cyanic glycosides except for maybe Bulgaris. So that's the only one that I'm going to stay away from. But Bambusas, the graceful, sea breeze is my favorite. You just take some leaves, you put those in water, simmer them, and you've got a hair tonic or basically a tea that makes your hair grow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. It grows so fast as it is. Couple of questions on soil. Someone, wanted to know what bamboo might tolerate, poor clay soils. Another person asked about what grows best on sandy soils. Are they soil specific?
Yes, and they're fairly resilient. The biggest thing about clay that I find is that you'll fight this thing where it becomes like it's sitting in a swimming pool and there's no drainage. And once the plant gets acclimated and it's grown and it sends out the root system, it can figure it out. But at the beginning, it can stress the plant out. And I've even lost some plants to this. So these are kind of like these subdivisions where I walk into, and whoever did the fill was like, I don't know what they did, but anyway, you've got these situations where like there's just zero drainage, right? And you really like the bamboos are going to help with all that eventually because they're going to form those tunnel root systems to start to aerate that soil, right? Sandy soil is another situation. So sandy soil, we're talking, especially when we're talking about like old orange groves and things like that. Bamboos are like bananas. They like food and they like water, and they like water first, right? So especially the tropical, subtropical bamboos. So they really want stuff that's going to hold moisture, which is why I use mulch a lot because it's doing a couple of different things. Bamboos are fungal dominant, so mulch for them is food. Again, remember, these guys are edge of the forest dwellers, right? So they're friends more with trees than their bacterial dominant, grassland cousins, right? So mulch holds moisture in, and it also feeds the plant. This is what they're doing with their leaf drop when they do this by nature. This is how they do this. But most of the time in these manicured situations, we're taking that leaf drop out. You can, kind of reestablish it by using mulch. But in general, the bamboos will figure it out. In those really sandy soils, those bamboos are going to stay smaller and they're going to grow slower. Right. Sometimes that's a good thing. Oftentimes I'll tell to people like, yeah, push your bamboos the first 2 years and then cut them off. Unless it's a drought, cut them off because that'll keep them, like I said about this goldfish, they want to grow to the resources that they have. So don't give them the resources that they need and they'll slow way down.
How much water do we need to provide our bamboos? So
when we're talking about like putting them out, like I'll go off of like what I do when I'm planting them out for regenerative agriculture situations. These fully grown clumps are getting 30 gallons each. We don't have to do that much in the landscape. Plus, the more of a root system they establish, the more resilient they're going to be. I will say that we are getting more and more problems with this drought in the springtime, and that's going to be an ongoing issue. Some of them have more susceptibility than others. You can see, like when you drive past these golf courses that have gracefuls sitting up on these sugar sand berms, they're having the biggest thing, and those guys really need to up their irrigation. If I was doing it, I'd probably put something a little tougher like a sea breeze up there, which is going to stay small. Like, again, you can kind of play with the idea that if you're putting bamboos into a situation where they're not as happy, they won't get as big, right? And in the condition of sea breeze, I've often put it in situations where I know it's like super dry and all that. It's going to slow down the growth, but it's also going to stay smaller, which in those kind of situations, now you've got a plant that usually gets 40 feet that's only staying in like 25.
All right. Two last questions that I know we're up against the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
Containing bamboos.
Yes.
How do we contain them?
Okay, so really containing has to do with starting at the beginning, if you're lucky, with right plant, right place, right? So this has a lot to do with understanding your medium, which we talked about at the beginning, really knowing where your plant is going and what it's capable of. And that sets the tone for where you're going down the road, right? If you're walking in on a maintenance of a plant that's been planted and now we're at a problem stage, then we're talking about maintenance and downsizing it, which is often the case, right? So then we're talking about cleaning it out, downsizing it, things like that. Bamboos can always be downsized. Like any tropical plant, you can cut them back. Some look better than others. In general, the smaller the culm is, the better it's going to look as a hedge. So like hedging oldhamii is probably going to look a little awkward, especially at the beginning. It'll end up giving this like big tropical leaf, but it does look a little awkward with the big culms. Kind of looks like you cut the top off, right? Which you did. The smaller ones tend to look much better on that, you know. So smaller bamboos tend to be ones that we hedge more often.
Okay. And last question, propagation. How are they propagated?
Oh, so several different ways to propagate them. Vulgaris has been the one it's the common, you know, Latin common bamboo. It's traveled all around the world, and it's for two reasons. One is you can cut a chunk off of it and put it in soggy, mucky water, and it pretty much grows, right? So Vulgaris vittata, Buddha, these are all relatives. It's the Bambusa vulgaris. And as a result, they've traveled all around the world, right? The other ones tend to be in varying degrees a little more challenging. Propagation of them by cuttings is fairly low unless you're really set up for that. The number one way to do it is by division, and that is cutting a piece of that pie. So again, think of like bamboos are like building in Miami, right? You've got a large, very shallow root system that's holding the base for that huge top that is taking a lot of wind pressure. And so that root system goes out way past, you know, to the drip line and a little bit beyond, which is why bamboos get in a little bit of trouble about competition with other plants. As far as like growing plants with them, they will grow very well with trees because trees go down and bamboos go across. So in general, that works really well. And then you're talking about succession. So things that you can grow at the beginning, the bamboos will end up crowding out down the way unless you maintain them. Now, certain ways that you can maintain them. There are some people in Florida who are using barrier systems in order to let like lawns or things like that grow up against them. Keep in mind when you're using a barrier system, it's like putting it in a container, right? So at some point the plant is going to outgrow that, and bamboos are fast growing plants and they like a lot of nutrients, and the way that they get those nutrients is they put out a large root system, right? Which makes them more resilient. So when you're restricting them from doing that, you're keeping their ability to be an efficient windbreak, but you're also restricting their ability to get nutrients. And so that's making them all a little bit less resilient as far as like the ups and downs of what we're doing with our weather. But it is an option. And then I said, like, again, you can simply cut the culms off. The easiest thing to do is when the shoots come up, cut them off at the shoots, then you're only talking about this much instead of cutting the whole culm off and running it through a chipper or removing a lot of debris. I mean, one of the things the tree guys, I get so much feedback from the tree guys, is they get really confused as to like how much work it's going to take to cut it down, because there's so much material that comes off of the bamboos, especially if you're downsizing something from like 20 feet to like 6 feet.
Awesome. Shanti, thank you so much. I
thank
learned
you.
a tremendous amount. This was excellent. Y'all had great questions. You know, please make sure that you keep up with Shanti's email address. You know, she's a wealth of knowledge and happy to answer more questions, I'm sure, if you email her directly. Just to remind you that, again, next month we have 2 scheduled webinars. The first one is scheduled for September 5th at 10 o'clock Eastern time, and that's going to be Success with Bedding Plants from the folks at Disney World. This was rescheduled from July. And the second one next month is scheduled for September 10th, again at 10 o'clock Eastern time, and that's going to be a landscape insect update with Dr. Adam Dale from University of Florida. Dr. Dale's always certainly one of our favorites. Again, please make sure you fill out the evaluation. As Claire said early on, it really helps us when we're planning for next year, and we're getting to that stage where we're starting to plan next year's sessions. Shanti, thank you so very much for taking the time, and I can't wait to get to meet you in person sometime soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for having interest in bamboos. We love to put like really useful information that's valid, that's true, you know, and that's really hard in the bamboo world. So please reach out if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. Everybody, have a wonderful day.
Yes.